Hey everyone, Cloud here. Welcome to my guide on the Bat Slayer assignment. Now, in this guide we'll be talking about the following: the requirements in order to kill them effectively, which Slayer Masters assign them as a task, best location to do the task, best strategy using their weaknesses, recommended equipment from highest to lowest, tips and tricks, and of course the key drops to collect from them. Now, you can choose to watch a certain part of this guide if you wish. Just make sure you have the YouTube annotations enabled to be able to click the relevant part. If not, just click the play all option. So, first off, we're going to talk about the requirements in order to kill these bats effectively. Now, because bats covers a wide variety of them, I think there's about 10 different bats in total, killing any specific of these types in the bat category will count towards your task. However, in this guide, I'll be talking about only 2 types of bats which I really recommend killing, which are the warped bats, which are the more lower level ones, or the giant bats, which are obviously the higher level ones. Each have their own differences, which we'll talk about further on in this guide. But anyways, either way, there's no Slayer level required to kill these monsters, and a minimal combat level is required as well, as they're fairly weak and quite easy to kill. Bit of enemy information. So, the warped bats have a combat level of 24, and the giant bats have a combat level of 64. The lower levels have 600 life points, and the giant bats have 1600. Both use a magic based attack, and the warp bats hit up to 48 and the giant hit up to 36. Bit unusual because obviously the higher level ones normally hit higher, but in this case they're more accurate, so that's the only thing you've got to be a little bit careful of. No specific Slayer item is required to kill them, and I recommend having 10 range and 10 defense in order to kill these effectively. The reason I'm talking about ranged here is it's the main weakness, which we'll get on a bit further on in this guide. But anyways, that's it for the requirements. Now onto which Slayer Masters assign them to you as a task. So, the lowest Slayer Master that can assign him as a task is Churail or Spira, who replaces him after a certain quest while Graphic sleeps. They can be both found in Tavali, southeast of the Lodestone. You'll see on the map where I'm displaying the UR here and the marker. That's where you can find them. You don't need any requirements in order to use them as a Slayer Master. However, I recommend having at least 20 combat before starting Slayer anyway, just to be able to sort of get the task done as quickly and effectively as possible. And both of them assign anywhere between 15 to 50 bats per task. The only other Slayer Master that assigns him as a task is Mazkna. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Basically, he can be found in Canifis. The only requirements to use him are you must have completed the Priest in Peril quest. This is just to be able to gain access to Canifis in the first place. He's very easy to find, as there's a Canifis Lodestone literally northeast of him, which you can activate after completing Priest in Peril, so it makes quite easy access to him. To use him as a Slayer Master, I recommend having about 40 combat, because obviously he hires a slightly higher amount of monsters, and obviously you want a more sort of better combat level to kill them just as effectively as before. And he assigns anywhere between 40 to 85 bats. But that's it for the Slayer Masters that assign them as a task. Next is the best location to do the task. So as I mentioned earlier, there's 2 different types of bats that I'm going to be showing you in this guide, the warped bats and the giant bats. I'll first off show you where to find the warped bats. So, they can be found in Lumbridge Catacombs, which is southeast of Lumbridge Castle. However, you must have completed the Blood Pact quest in order to go into this area, which is a really low level quest, and most of you probably would have completed it anyway. But we're going to head there now. Those of you who haven't been in there since completing the quest, you'll notice you're heading pretty much the same way as you did during the quest, up to the point where it come up to the end of the quest, and you'll notice there's now these stairs to lead down into the catacombs. So you can run past all these different monsters. There's quite a fair few in here, but they shouldn't be aggressive towards you, and once you run all the way through, you should eventually come up to the area where there's a lot of warped bats. So there's a high amount in here, so it makes killing or using these bats to kill a very quick method, as you've got access to a fair variety of them compared to the giant bats, which I will talk about now. So if you want to go fight the giant bats, the best location to fight them, I find, is just outside of Keep Lafay, which is southwest of Cavapy and southeast of Sears Village. So the quickest way to reach them is either the Sears Village Lodestone or Cavapy Lodestone. Both are pretty much the same sort of route to get there, and you're going to run to that direction from either Lodestone. Now the giant bats will be quite aggressive to you if you're a lower level, like I am quite a low level in this. but you can maintain a safe distance from them. There's a certain point where they can't travel any further, so you can use that to basically set yourself up. But there's about 3 giant bats around here, which don't seem as a lot compared to the warped bats. However, because they're higher level, they will take longer to kill, giving them more time to respawn before you like stand around for ages waiting for another giant bat to appear. But that is where the best 2 locations are regarding whatever bat you choose to kill. That's it for the best location to do the task. Next, on to strategy using their weaknesses. So, as I mentioned earlier, bats are weak to range, specifically ranged bolt attacks. This applies to both of them. Now, obviously bats can be killed with any combat style. If you're a lot stronger melee than you are ranged, then go ahead and kill that. However, in this guide we'll be speaking about their weakness. So they're very weak to bolts, and obviously making ranged the best method to slay them. If you're fairly good at range, like decent level wise, these are abilities that are going to come really handy in killing them. So fragment shot, dead shot, snapshot and rapid fire are the key abilities that will deal a lot of heavy damage on them very quickly. And again, like I mentioned earlier on, you want at least a minimum of 10 range and 10 defense if you're going to use this method. It seems quite a low level for ranged to fight them. However, really they're not very defensive, they're just more accurate than anything, so you'll be able to hit them quite frequently anyway, and this applies to both the warped bats and giant bats. But yeah, that's it for their weaknesses. Now onto the recommended equipment. So normally I show the equipment from highest to lowest, but in this case, because bats are a really sort of low Slayer assignment to get for low levels, it's mostly going to be low level players that receive them as the task, unless you've waited till you've reached like level 200 combat before beginning Slayer, which I'll be very surprised of. But anyway, this is it for the recommended equipment. So I like to show these in sort of tiers, just so you understand sort of what categories I class each armor set in. So, for my character, because he's quite a low ranged level, the best armour I could use was the hard leather armour. This is why I recommend having level 10, because there's quite a significant difference between the normal leather armour and the hard leather, and it's going to help your defence. This is the key at the end of the day. This armour is going to improve your defence and accuracy. Now, for every armour set I'm going to talk about here, I do recommend dual wielding crossbows, because you're going to want to deal as much ranged damage as possible to the bats to complete this task as quick as possible. So, if you're range between sort of level 1 to level 30, let's say, ranged armor, you're going to either want soft leather armor, hard leather, studded leather, or the snakeskin armor. Each time obviously your constitution and defense bonus will increase. For bolts, you want to use obviously the most close bolt you can to the crossbow, so you're either able to use bronze, iron, steel, mithril. Obviously the sets of crossbows will increase as your range level increases as well. The best sort of cape thing to have would be an Ava's Accumulator, which is an item you can receive after completing a quest. I can't remember the quest off the top of my head though, but basically it helps to magnet arrows straight back into your inventory. However, if you haven't completed that quest or have the levels to do it, an Obsidian Cape would be quite good to have because of its critical bonus for both melee, ranged and magic. And also having an Amulet of Glory or Amulet of Range, something like that, will help to boost your critical hit damage again. And for the ring, a Ring of Wealth will be the best thing to have as well. So obviously once your range and defense level goes up, you'll pass the leather armors and studded leather armors, and then you'll be into the dragon hide sort of section, which is sort of the next tier I speak about. So obviously you've got green dragon hide, red, blue, black. It all goes up obviously as your range level increases. So any of these sets is going to improve, and obviously you want to try and get a full outfit. Now unless you have the I can't remember, there's either a mini game or a certain requirement you need, but basically you can get Dragonhide Coifs, but they do require recharging or repairing, so I don't bother using them and instead use an Archer's Helmet. I believe you need to have completed the Fremenic Trials quest in order to be able to wear these helmets. You can buy them from the Grand Exchange, it just won't allow you to wield them. Again, we're still sticking to the Amulet of Glory. Unless you can afford an Amulet of Range or an Amulet of Fury, keep to that one. This one you'll notice I had the level to use the Accumulator, which is handy because that will just just save you having to keep picking up your bolts. Obviously, depending on your range level, your crossbow type will increase as well, so you'll start getting into the admin or even rune section for the crossbows, and obviously you want to have the relevant bolts. If you're using a rune crossbow, you want to use the rune bolts just to do as much range damage as possible. And obviously each time your tier or set increases, as well as your range level, your accuracy and damage output is going to increase as well. So if you've gone past the Black Dragon Hide, you're going to get into the really high level sets now. However, I don't think a lot of people will have the levels to use them, or even if they did, they shouldn't be really receiving bats as a task. But the more higher level sets, so you can have what I'm displaying here, the Armadillo set, which is one of the sort of more expensive but better range output armors. There's also Kirill the Tainted, which is the Barrow set. You can also receive Death Lotus armor as well from player owned ports, or there's even the new Sirenic armor. But these are all really sort of quite high leveled expensive items, so I really doubt any of you are going to be using them. But again, obviously as your armor rating increases, you're going to do some really high damage output. If you have the level of money to afford, so obviously the dual wielding crossbows up to this point, if you can use an Armadillo crossbow, that's a really good weapon to have. Obviously Amulet of Fury, you should hopefully have the levels now to be using that. I stick to using skill capes once I get to this point instead of the accumulator, because obviously it's not that much hassle to pick up the bolt, and I rather go for more of a range critical output rather than the bonus of having the bolts appear back in my inventory. Throughout it though, I still make sure I use a Ring of Wealth, because the I think it's the Sears ring, which is the ranged ring you can use to boost it. It's really a sort of a minimal critical improvement, so I rather just keep a Ring of Wealth and increase the amount of loot I make from my tasks. But that's it, that is all about the recommended equipment. Obviously it's only a recommendation, you don't have to stick to it. I'm just basically showing you the different tiers so you get a rough idea what to go for. But the higher tier armor you can get, or the higher level range armor you get, the more defense you're going to get, the more life points you're going to get, and the better ranged accuracy and damage output you're going to receive as well. So just bear that in mind when deciding what gear to give yourself. But yeah, that is it for the recommended equipment. Now on to tips and tricks. So, due to these being quite a low level monster, I don't have many tips and tricks to sort of give you in this one. Obviously you can't safe spot against these monsters because they do attack with magic. Another reason why range is the best setup, because it's going to be the most defensive to you. The only thing I would recommend is, you'll notice if you look at my ability bar, I try and use as many sort of low level abilities as possible, the ones that require like no momentum in order to use them. And you'll also notice I've got some defensive abilities on there as well. Basically the main purpose of that is you want to get your adrenaline up to 50% or even 100% as quick as possible to use your really high level ranged abilities that are going to do the most damage against them. So obviously the 100% ranged ability, I can't remember off the top of my head what it's called. I believe it's Deadshot, something like that. That is going to be the best ability to use to kill the bats effectively. Now this really applies when you're fighting the giant bats, because obviously they've got quite a high amount of life points, and like I said, their accuracy is much higher than the warped bats, so you want to kill them as quickly as possible. Obviously other abilities like Rapid Fire are going to be also good as well. They don't require 100% momentum, but 50% is needed anyway. So basically you want to just keep using these low abilities as quick as often to be able to deal as much sort of damage to them while building the adrenaline up as quick as you can. And as soon as you have the chance to use those high level abilities, you want to use them and deal some really heavy damage. Now you'll notice obviously they are quite accurate. It doesn't help with me being a lower sort of combat level on this account. But a lot of you will be in this same scenario. However, despite my low level, I can still kill the giant bats. You just got to be conscious of your health. So what I tend to do, I let my health sort of fall to about 20% of like the full amount before I start eating food. The main reason, eating food will decrease your adrenaline, momentum, whatever you want to call it, taking you even longer to get it back up to use the high level abilities. And also, obviously you then reduce the amount of damage you're doing on them. Well, the amount of time you're going to take completing the task is going to increase. So obviously you don't want to let yourself get that low, you're going to put yourself at risk. But if you let your health fall to quite low and then use that time to quickly get your health up to full again, it should sort of shorten the period of time where you're going to be like spending more time eating and less time hitting. You're basically finding that balance between them. definitely, especially with the giant bats, they will drop this item called Batwing, which I definitely recommend collecting. So obviously you want to save yourself some inventory space for that. And the only other thing I recommend is obviously the bats will drop bones, and if you put them into your ability bar, as you'll notice I have for the hotkey 0, basically you want to wait until you've got like a full bag of bones and then find somewhere safe to bury them, and if you just keep pressing the 0 key or whatever hotkey you've assigned for them, you'll quickly bury the bones, getting yourself a massive amount of prayer experience as well in a short space of time, just to make even more benefit from this task. But that's the only really tips and tricks I've got for these monsters. Now onto the final section, which is the key drops to collect. So, you will earn either 8 or 32 Slayer experience per bat. Obviously the 8 experience will be killing from the warped and the 32 will be killing the giant bats. So you can see here why I recommend killing the giant bats more for the XP gain. However, the drop rate differs, which I'll talk about in a moment. So obviously a task of 50 warped bats will get you 400 Slayer experience, and for the giant bats it will get you 1600, so quite a substantial difference. Now this is where the other difference comes into it. For giant bats, the only things that they drop are the Batwing and bones, and I think that is effectively it. So obviously in terms of like loot and that, you're going to want to fight the warped bats if you want to get more sort of money. However, if you are more bothered about the Slayer experience, which is what I am, you're going to want to kill the giant bats. Now the giant bats still drop Batwing, which is probably the most expensive thing that they drop, and that includes the warped bats as well. So either way, you're still going to make a fair bit of money from the task regardless. However, if you do decide to fight the warped bats, these are some of the weapons and armour that I recommend. And obviously, you're going to really fight the warped bats if you're a really low level player and just starting off, so these sort of things are going to appeal to you the most. So bronze arrows, because obviously these are stackable and you can use these to get your ranged up. Staff of air you can sell for a fairly decent price on a grand exchange. They drop tin and copper ores and bronze and iron bars, which you can use for mining and smithing, etc. Obviously they drop bones, both of them drop Batwing, which is the key item to look out for here. That's the one that will make you the most money. They drop various different types of runes which you wouldn't collect, talismans, feathers and fishing bait. So obviously all these items here I mentioned will assist in other skills. So obviously if you're fighting the warped bats and you're a low level player just starting off, they're really going to sort of more benefit you to increase your other skills as well. But I still really, if you do have the level and the confidence to do so, I do recommend fighting the giant bats more just to get the extra XP, because that's the really key thing here you want, the Slayer experience. However, both of them obviously have access to the rare drop table. Now, the rare drop table applies to most monsters, and most of the rare drop table is worth good money. And with a ring of wealth, the chance of getting it is increased. And the highest reward from the rare drop table is about 25 mil. Obviously, that's the current grand exchange price of it at the moment. So, obviously, if you're really lucky enough, you could receive it from either killing warped bats or giant bats. And the ring of wealth is going to be the key, though, to helping you get something. It's really, really rare, but it does happen. I know I've killed low-level monsters before and got quite a high amount of money from them. So either way, it's kind of a gamble. Obviously, the loot I mentioned is stackable, but you're either going to sacrifice making a little bit of money for killing warped bats and get less experience, or you're just going to risk only getting Batwing or rare drop table from the giant bats, but getting extra XP instead. So it's completely up to you. I would say if you're low level and you don't really feel like killing the giant bats, or you start doing so and you find it's taking like about 5 minutes to kill each bat, then maybe you're a little bit too low of a level to start fighting them yet, and instead just go and fight the warped bats. However, if you can kill the giants, go for it. The more XP you can get, the better. But that is it about key drops to collect. So, that is pretty much it for my guide. I know I've gone quite in depth there. Obviously, I like to give as much information to you guys as possible. My main account has achieved 99 Slayer. It was the first level 99 I got, and I know how long and frustrating it can take to get those Slayer levels up. So I want to help you out as best I can. I have worked very hard on this guide, so please don't forget to like, comment, favourite and subscribe and share it with your friends, just to spread the word around. Makes it really worth it. I wish you all the best of luck in your Slayer assignment with these monsters. Obviously take note on what I said, whether you want to fight the warped or giants, it's completely up to you, and obviously the things I have mentioned today are only recommendations and advisories. You can adapt to them, but I wish you all luck in your task. Thank you very much for watching, and happy slaying.